Today we're doing a little paint with me. I'm very excited. Here's my palette. This is where we're starting. All of this is dried, caked on stuff from the past few years of using this palette. So, kind of what we're working with, but this is the setup. We are working with a photo of me from 2003 when I was in kindergarten. This is on Halloween. I was a little angel and I am holding a children's Bible. I am not religious. My family has never really been religious. Like, we've gone to church a little bit when I was a kid, but yeah, not 100% sure why I was holding a Bible for Halloween, but I want to spend this video kind of explaining my process a little bit, but also, we might chat about some other things. We'll kind of just see where the conversation takes us, I guess. But starting off, I want to say that this is completely me live painting, with the exception of I cut out where I was stopping to go either pick up paint or mix paint. This was actually about an hour of painting, a little bit over that, but I cut it down to about 20-ish minutes. So we'd be sitting here for a long time just staring at the painting and me not doing anything if I didn't cut that stuff out. So, but I'm hoping at some point to have two cameras so that I can also film me mixing the paint so you guys can get like the real like full experience. But for today, it's just the painting. So I'm starting off by putting in all of my darkest values. I've just kind of always functioned this way. I was taught to paint by putting in my darkest values first, then my lightest, and then my warmest colors and my coolest colors, just because it gives you something to kind of compare the rest of your color mixing to and all of your values and stuff. I do it now, I think, just because I enjoy kind of having those darkest shades first. It gives like some immediate visual interest to the painting, and also just kind of like, I don't know, it gets them out of the way and it gives you something to kind of build on, and it also gives you like a solid starting point, like otherwise I could be looking at a painting going like, where in the world should I be starting? Like, I don't know where to go, but this kind of gives me like, a goal to set and complete for myself. So a lot of you probably know me from my childhood work. I do a lot of paintings of me and my caretakers, so like my mother and my father. I still am like interested in that work, but I've been kind of finding myself being more focused on the photos of myself as a kid that are just of me. So like, I used to be very focused on exploring my relationships with my parents, and lately it's been kind of more about exploring my relationship with myself. And even in exploring these photos that are just of me, I still am kind of exploring my relationship with my parents, because, the chances that the photos were taken by my mother are very strong. So it's, kind of looking at me as a kid through her eyes. So I'm reading this book, Will I Ever Be Good Enough, by Carol McBride, which is about healing the daughters of narcissistic mothers. And it has just kind of like opened my eyes a lot to the healing of, I don't know, mourning the childhood that I didn't really get to have, and mourning the relationships that I didn't really get to have. And it's caused me to focus a lot on my inner child. And it's funny because, like, obviously this is a book about relationships specifically with your mother, and I'm not really thinking about her very much. Like, I'm just thinking about myself, and I'm in this kind of first part of the book where they're talking about healing and like how to take the first steps, and part of that is just like overwhelming grief. Like, you're just supposed to grieve what you missed out on and grieve the relationships you don't get to have, and just feel that grief like so intensely and let it happen, like not push it away. And I have started journaling, which is very new to me. I journaled some as a kid, but they were read by people, and I kind of just stopped journaling after that. And my therapist actually thought it was funny, because when I first started seeing them like a few months, like a year ago, they asked me if I journaled, and I was like, absolutely not. I do not journal. I've never been able to get into journaling. I don't like journaling. And then randomly, kind of at the beginning of the year, I was like, maybe I'll start journaling again. And this book really pushes journaling and like has some prompts and stuff like that. And so I've been doing that more, and it feels really good to just kind of, I don't know, sit and think about my relationship with my child self and really grieve her losses, rather than like, I don't know, rather than like thinking specifically about relationships and like connections. I'm really thinking about her. I don't know if that makes sense. But part of the book that I thought was extremely helpful, like it kind of just flipped a switch in my brain, was talking about how as adults, we often can rely on the people we're in relationships with to like kind of take care of us. Like we're looking for someone to take care of us in the way that we weren't taken care of as a kid. And I definitely have done that with my husband. And having that kind of reminder that like no, you're an adult, you're responsible for taking care of yourself and healing from your trauma. It's not just kind of this push of like, oh, you're responsible for healing from your trauma. It's also this reminder that like you're responsible for it, but that means that you're also capable of doing it. So like, you know, you can do it. You're a capable adult human being. And I think that's kind of where this idea of exploring more of the specifically like my relationship with myself and my child self kind of came from, and why I'm feeling more drawn to do these paintings that are just of me, because I really want to connect with that little girl. And as someone who has like pretty intense memory loss from childhood, I don't remember I don't even remember a lot of the things that I liked. You know, I don't remember bad things that happened. I don't remember good things that happened. So I'm kind of trying to revisit that. And I feel like these paintings are an interesting way of doing it because they're usually like photos of happy moments, right? So, you know, so to go back to painting really quick, I moved on from kind of blocking in those darkest values to moving into more color. So I thought when I was looking at the reference photo, like at first I really wanted to go straight into the figure because that typically is the part of the painting that I'm most like stressed out about doing, because it's the part that needs to like, you know, look the best sometimes. And so typically I go from doing the darkest values to the figure because I kind of want to get that over with. But in this piece specifically, I was like, no, I feel like once I block in that carpet with some of the brighter colors, I feel like things will start to really pop. So I did that just a little bit just to kind of get some of that, you know, lime green. Yes, I primed this with lime green. It was originally going to be a panel for a nostalgia painting, but I guess it still is in a way, but not for like a toy. But yeah, so I went ahead and did that. And then after I did the color, I moved on to doing the white of the dress just because I knew, you know, kind of back to the darkest value, lightest value thing. This is going to be the lightest value in the painting. And I knew it would pop a lot, and kind of, again, with the more contrast visual interest kind of idea, it immediately makes the painting more interesting, which makes me more interested in working on it. But also, you know, it kind of gets that comparison out of the way. Like now I have something to compare the rest of my values to. I also want to talk about my brush choices. So if you're paying attention to like the size of brush that I'm using, sometimes I will choose a brush that is too large for what I'm painting purposefully. It's because if I use a brush that's like small enough to get into like the nitty gritty details too quickly, I find that that's exactly what I do. I get into detail too quickly and I get too precise too quickly. When you use a brush that's a little bit too big, you kind of force yourself to be a little messy and like get stuff down quicker. It just, I don't know, it works for me. I know some people like it makes them anxious to be messy at first, but like that's how I work. So back to what I was talking about a little bit about the inner child stuff, but I was just thinking about how I use art as a way to connect with my inner child. And I think that's funny because like, obviously it's like what I do as a profession. It's my career. This is, you know, I do it because it's my work, but also because I did art so much when I was a kid. I was alone a lot. I wasn't an only child. I have an older brother and a younger brother, but I never really lived with either of them because we have really big age differences. And also they each have a different parent from me, so we're only half siblings and they're not related. It's complicated and confusing. But I was alone a lot as a kid because I didn't really have anyone to play with, and a lot of what I did when I was by myself was art. I did a lot of like klutz books. I don't know if people remember those. I'm sure they're still around. But I loved klutz books. I loved making little crafts. I loved drawing. Even like as I got older, when I was in like high school and middle school, I would just sit in my room for hours and just draw. I would just find images on the internet and I would just copy them over and over and over again in my sketchbooks and never show them to anybody. Or I would like hang them on my wall and then just leave them there. And I just did it because, I don't know, I just really connected with it. So like as an adult, sitting here doing it to connect with my inner child in a way of, I wonder how she would feel about me painting her. You know, like I wonder if I could go back and tell myself like, no, I paint you a lot. I wonder what she would say. I highly recommend working with old childhood photos, even like if you want to take the safer, like, I don't know, less emotionally taxing option and not do the photos that you have with like other people that maybe hurt you in your life and maybe just do the photos of yourself. I can't recommend it enough, because honestly, just like sitting here with this picture of me, because like you're sat doing the painting, but that also means that like you have the reference photo up, which means that you are sitting there and staring at a photo of yourself for potentially hours and hours. And there's something that it's almost like exposure therapy, but like in a sentimental kind of way. I don't know, but like with the photos of me with my caregivers, yeah, it's a little bit harder. With the photos of just me, it's kind of like, I don't know, when I'm in the right headspace, it's just kind of sweet, and it feels like I'm just really sitting with her and taking like a really intentional time to just sit down and be with her and think about her. So here is where I say, like, I usually go to the figure first. Here's where I finally moved on to the figure, because I was scared, especially with this tiny face. Like, it can be hard sometimes to convey emotion or just like, I don't know, proportions accurately when the face is so small, in my experience. Sometimes it's easier because, you know, you can really simplify what you're putting down, but sometimes it's kind of hard. So I had already blocked out those little, the darkest shadows, which were the eyes and the mouth and kind of the side of the nose. But there wasn't a ton of contrast in this photo, so I did kind of exaggerate it a little bit. Things weren't quite that dark. But going in, just blocking out the skin, and then the hands. The hands are always the hardest part. I know that's like a trope with artists, like we hate painting hands. But truly, I am not the biggest fan of hands. Sometimes they're really fun because there's a lot of like, you know, there's a lot of movement in hands, and there's also just a lot of different, I don't know, there's so many different colors and shapes, and if, depending on how they're being held, different shadows and stuff in the fingers. But hands this small, I was definitely really intimidated to do, especially because like the shadows needed to be pretty accurate in order to convey like the weird positioning of the hand. So the left hand, I had my pinky like tucked behind the book. I still think it kind of looks a little funky, and I don't know, maybe I might have to go in and add a pinky like in front of the book at some point, because it just kind of looks weird. But I was holding it with like my pinky and then kind of resting my thumb on the underside of the book, and it just kind of looks a little weird. But the right hand I thought looked really good. It ended up looking pretty convincing. And it's funny because like there's only 3 values, 3 different colors in that hand. I did like the tips of the fingers the lightest, and then like the middle of the fingers were kind of a mid-tone, and then darker on the bottom of the hand, and it looked great. So another way that I've been connecting with my inner child lately has been thrifting. I know thrifting is like particularly trendy right now, but a lot of times I don't even buy anything. I just go and just look for stuff. So sometimes that means like going straight to the kids section and looking at the toys and trying to find toys that I had as a kid or that were similar to ones that I had as a kid. It's really fun. I don't know, especially when you find something that is like something exactly like what you had when you were a kid. Like I found a pink Barbie beetle a while ago that was really just fun to see and touch and just, you know, remember having. And I found a Polly Pocket bag recently that, oh god, I wish I would have gotten it, but also I'm glad I didn't, because I didn't actually have it as a kid. It's just the image on the front of Polly Pocket made me think about all the games I used to play on the computer when I was little. And yeah, but like I said, I don't even buy stuff a lot because I want to leave it for either some other 2000s girly who like had that stuff when when they were little, or I want to leave it for some kid now to have. It's also looking through the clothes that really brings me back, because I remember being little and like going through my mom's closet and, you know, touching all of her like her silk stuff and like the just the things that were like so soft and just seemed so like adult to me, and fantasizing about being a woman and being able to wear these like pretty clothes and jewelry and stuff like that. So I found actually a vintage White Stag velvet like 90s shirt a while ago. And the first time I wore it, I got so many compliments, and I was so excited about that. It was like a holy grail for me. But, and it's just like, it's exciting to find that stuff that you kind of connect with and that brings back memories, whether you buy it or not. And, you know, I don't know, it's just kind of like a a fun activity to just go to the thrift store. I usually go after therapy, so I have therapy on Wednesday mornings, and then I go straight to Savers right after that, and just kind of spend a couple hours walking around the store and just checking things out. And there's always like the dopamine rush when you find something that you've really been looking for, like when I found that top, or I found Groovy Girls a while ago too. That was really fun. I didn't end up getting them, but it was just nice to see. So I'm going in here and I'm just kind of blocking in the more boring parts of the painting. So I kind of did the stuff that I was a little stressed out about. I got the skin in, I got some of the, the hands done, stuff like that. But I needed to get in the things that I was kind of putting off because they're just like not as fun to do, and also they're important to the painting, but they're not like very intricate, which is just kind of the white wall, parts of the whiteboard behind me. So there's like I don't know if you can tell yet, but there's a rocking chair that's right behind me, and then it's like kind of up against a wall that is like the whiteboard that has some posters on it, and then just like the wall that has some posters on it, and kind of the floorboards. So I just went in and I got most of that stuff in, and now I'm going in and doing the rocking chair because, we're just kind of moving around the painting now. It's not really any rhyme or reason. It's mostly just kind of like what I feel like painting at this point, which right now is the rocking chair. This is sometimes where I get kind of overwhelmed when I'm doing larger paintings because, it takes longer to get larger paintings covered than it does these little tiny, this is 4x6, I believe. And when I'm making these decisions of like, oh, where do I go next? And it's not based off of like lightest value, darkest value, anything like that. It's just kind of based off of like, where do I feel like painting next? Sometimes it gets stressed out and then I'll abandon a painting for a little bit because I don't know. I'm like, I don't know what to do. The decision making is hard, but in the little paintings is a lot easier because, there's like less area to cover and it's so much quicker. So little paintings are really good to do when I am feeling less motivated to paint because they are just like more satisfying more quickly. Like you can finish a whole painting in like a day or maybe two if you want to, go back in and do some details on another day. But it's not as like, I don't know, you're not stuck in those like middle stages for as long, which can be kind of frustrating sometimes. I think I found a lot lately, specifically, I've been like covering a whole large canvas in one sitting and then kind of tucking it away and not looking at it for like a couple months because I don't know, I do the whole once over, there's no more white space or whatever. And then I'm just kind of like, where do I go from here? It's a big reason why I make the little nostalgia paintings. So I've made like a little Britney Spears perfume bottle. I've done like, I did a Groovy Girl. That one was a little bit bigger. That was 8x10. But those paintings are really nice to do because they're just kind of like a break from the larger work, which is harder, not just because it's larger, but also because typically when I'm doing a larger piece, the topic is a little bit heavier. They're not quite as joyful. So doing the little nostalgia studies are just kind of like, they're fun and they're a little break from my brain having to work so hard and like, doing the work of making a larger piece, but also doing the mental work of making a larger piece. So yeah, I recommend doing like, if you're someone who makes a lot of work that's kind of heavy, no matter the topic, but just like emotionally hard, I highly recommend taking breaks with just like little quick pieces that you just don't put a ton of effort into. Just, no think, just paint. So the area next to the back of the rocking chair on the left, I was kind of struggling with because so there's like a rocking chair and then there's like a bag hanging off the rocking chair, and the bag was clear and had like some colorful stuff in it. And this is kind of one of those instances where it's like, I'm making decisions for the painting now and less so for me. So like, it's not, that bag wasn't sentimental to me. It wasn't important to me that the contents of the bag were like really visible. And I think had I tried to add all of that detail into the painting, it would have gotten kind of distracting because there was a lot of like reds and yellows and stuff. It was just very bright. And so I kind of just slapped some stuff on there. It was just like a green bag. So I kind of blocked that in. It doesn't look super green in the video, but it is like a darker green bag. And, put like some very like vague shapes just to kind of get something in there, but not make it like distracting, if that makes sense. And same with these posters. So the posters were like super, they were like kindergarten classroom posters. Like they had a bunch of color on them and like a bunch of phrases and quotes, and it was like, the encouraging kind of stuff, but it was also like the calendar, and it was also like colors and like stuff like that. There was one that was like a grid. I couldn't really tell exactly what it was, but it had, a lot of lines on it. And I ended up leaving a lot of those little details out because I was just like, they're not necessary for the painting. I think I put enough in so that you can kind of see what's happening, kind of like infer that like maybe this is a classroom, and I think that the carpet and the chair also kind of illustrates that. But you can still see that maybe they're classroom posters, but they're not super detailed. You don't need to know what they say. That's not really important. But also doing stuff like this keeps it a little bit more open for not just interpretation from whoever's viewing your painting, but also just kind of like, I don't know, it leaves room for people to insert their own memories into your painting. So as much as this is a painting about me specifically, this is also something that, people might look at and, I don't know, you might just think about like Halloween when you were a kid, or you might, even though this doesn't really like scream Halloween because, I don't know, Angel and Bible, again, not sure about that, but it might make you think about Halloween. It might just make you think about being a kid. It might make you think, if you were religious as a kid, it might make you think about something like that. If you looked like me, I get comments and DMs all the time saying, oh my god, we looked so much alike as kids, which I think is funny. But if you looked like me, you might just like see yourself in the painting, and kind of leaving out some of those more specific details lets people allude to this. I did include the 2003. I thought about leaving that out because I wanted to leave it a little bit more open to people inserting themselves and not, feeling like, oh, they had to be. And I feel like a lot of the time, sometimes people will look at my paintings when I give interpretations and they kind of feel like that's the right answer and that they're not allowed to interpret something completely different. And putting the date in there, I was worried that people would look at it and kind of think like, oh, I wasn't a kid in kindergarten in 2003, therefore this doesn't relate to me, because that's just not true. Nope. I am such a firm believer in the fact that like, even if an artist intended something to be very specific about a painting, you interpreting that differently is like completely valid. And I just think an illustration of the powerful nature of artwork and how it just, it doesn't matter what the artist intended. When you're looking at the piece, you are going to see it from your own bias, and you're gonna think what you think about it depending on your life. Sorry about the weird lighting in here. So the lighting got weird, the sun went on the painting, and it just kind of like auto adjusted a little bit funky just a couple of times. But if you see it get blue and look like twilight, that's why. So looking at this painting now that it's almost done, and just thinking about maybe what I would have done differently. So this is definitely more of like a sketch than it is like a finished painting, and maybe I'll go back into it at some point. But I think I was a little bit too sketchy in some places. I think I should have blended things a little bit more. So sometimes it's really fun to kind of leave a lot of that underpainting, so like that lime green showing. But I think here it was a little bit distracting, and maybe that's just a case of I need to not use lime green again. I thought the lime green was fun because it was my favorite color as a kid. So, I was kind of trying to connect with that. And I do think that it offers some fun contrast and like visual interest, but also like, I don't know, it was a little bit too much in places. And I wish I would have kind of fuzzed out some of those lines because they're a little bit distracting. Like specifically the high contrast between like the cushion on the rocking chair and like the wood on the rocking chair is just, I know it's a little bit much. I do plan on doing more of these. I actually did a poll on my Insta stories for a few photos that I found in a photo album that I had like stored on a shelf that I forgot about. And so I do plan on making a few more of these little studies and these videos of Paint With Me, because it was like so easy to film, and it is fun to just like chat with you guys, even though there's nobody talking to me. But yeah, so I think like taking what I learned from this painting, which is that I need to fuzz out some of the details. I need to make it a little bit more like, and you put a little bit more effort into places in the background, even if that's just by like abstracting some things. Yeah, you take what you learned from one painting and then you bring it into the next one. So that's exactly what I'll do. And I don't know if it was clear. I know like the angle is funny, and I will show you a flat image and like some close-ups at the end. But these are wings, so it was like part of the little angel wings. So that's kind of like the details that I'm putting in now. So I don't know if you guys like hearing me talk about inner child stuff or about like my childhood specifically. I'm trying to, divulge some detail without going like too much into trauma dumping territory. But it was fun to talk about stuff like that. And if you guys have any questions about, I don't know, artwork and healing and like kind of I don't know, my feelings behind it or maybe my processes or something like that, please feel free to ask them, because I can't guarantee I'll answer everything, because there might be some things that I want to keep to myself, but I would love to try. So I went back in here on the face and just kind of did a second round of just little details, you know, kind of like cleaning stuff up a little bit. But we're almost to the end. So here we go. Here she is all finished. I am pretty happy with how this came out. I think, again, there are places that I think are a little bit too messy, but look at the right hand again with, I really like how that came out. The left part of the rocking chair I'm not super pleased with, but overall, I'm happy with this little study and I think she's pretty cute. So yeah, I just wanted to give you guys a last look at my setup, a little bit of the aftermath of everything. It kind of looks the same from this angle, but all the wet and shiny is the new paint. Thank you for watching. If you feel like subscribing and liking and all that, please do. Thank you.